There's so many factors, right? There's the innate differences that children come in with in terms of learning differences, which we'll touch on in a moment. There's the degree to which their parents are literate and demonstrating through exposure various literacy practices. There's the preschools they come into. So the preschools, the innate, then the parents and the exposure kind of contribute to this readiness. There's a degree to which the English that they've learned as a child is actually represented in the English that they're being asked to learn to read with. There's the media. One of the things that really gets me, this is just along the lines of the shift happens conversation we were talking about earlier. And I don't want to speak for all of you, but those that are kind of in my age range, when I was growing up, there was 3 TV stations. And rabbit ears that was with some fuzzy stuff every now and then, which gets stuff that nobody wanted to watch anyway. Right? The average kid today, look at the media richness they have. My point being is that in a way, the world has become so much more complex, and the complexity, being successful with the complexity, requires being literate. Not just because of being able to learn to read, but being able to be quickly, dexterously, abstractly able. Reading kind of formats a certain capability of mental processing beyond just the skill. So it's never been more critical, on the one hand. On the other hand, it's never been harder in the sense that, like I said, in eras gone by, reading was an exclusive way the average child could escape their kind of media impoverished bubble. There wasn't all kinds of intellectual exercise opportunities and creative explorations and imaginatory, playgrounds and what have you for children, except by reading. So today, there's less incentive to read than at any other time. But there's a greater priority on reading, a greater necessity for reading. And one other thing I think is really critical is this. Have you ever listened to a group of 5-year-olds talk amongst themselves? Listen to the complexity of the language being exchanged. The words, how fast they're moving. If you could took a transcript of the average conversation amongst 5-year-olds and stick it in column A, let's say, then let's go to a beginning reader and pick the vocabulary and the words that are being used there. Why would kids with the language powers evidenced in their conversations want to read that moronic stuff? The point is, it's never been harder to learn to read. It's never been more important. There's the dysteachia, which Engelman's so Legion famous for, right? There's the training problems in education. There's the resistance. All these things are videos on the web for you. There's the superficial thinking, which we touched on. One of my favorites is fault, and this is probably the most critical in the sense that we've created a condition in which these children, it's got nothing to do with them personally. It's got nothing to do with them personally. And yet the entire system, the parents, the teachers, the education system as a whole, conspires unintentionally, but still nonetheless, to cause them to feel like their difficulty is a reflection of something wrong with them. This is a crime. This is a crime. Imagine what it's like to grow up feeling ashamed of your mind. People talk about dyslexia and talk about all kinds of variations that are contributing to the reading problem. But for the kids who have difficulty with this, the biggest thing that's disabling their learning is the development of this mind shame. Right? Think of it like this. Just as we're going to touch on this even more as we go forward in our last few minutes, but imagine having a pre-conscious, it's before you're even aware of, right? Automatic emotional aversion to the feeling of confusion. Because when you get confused, it causes you to feel bad about yourself. So the confusion causes you to feel shame. Now, we're all masterful shame avoiders. And if any of you spend even 5 minutes reflecting on your own life in the course of a day and could get honest with yourself and see it, you'd see that you circumnavigated the whole day around avoiding the things that cause you to feel bad about yourself. So what happens to your life if you learn to avoid feeling confused because of how bad it makes you feel? Confusion is implicit in all real learning. So going through life avoiding confusion is profoundly learning disabling. That's the main consequence of protracted learning to read. The reason for Children of the Code isn't about how to teach reading in some new way. It's not about any of that. It's that the process of learning to read is doing more damage to more people's learning than any other single thing we can imagine. So there's lots involved here. There's the readiness piece, the nature, nurture, like how much of this is biological, and the emotion, cognition. All these are videos, and all these are more in depth on the website. The sensitive slope of early brain plasticity, how language foundations form in the brain, and the meaningful differences based on Hart Risley's work, which I hope most of you are familiar with, that all prepare children to kind of take off, like I said, into this confusion. So all these factors are involved in how well somebody punches through the confusion before they shame out. Let me just ask a question to help ground this a little bit. You know that old game show, what was it, Family Feud, where they take the surveys, numbers on the board? What's the number one thing adults are afraid of? Huh? Failure. Okay. Actually, the number one thing according to the surveys is public speaking. I know that well because I feel it every time I do this. And the reason that is so frightening is for the fear of failure. But if you deconstruct both of those, it's not the failure. It's not even the public speaking. It's the fear of the shame. Right? It's the fear of the shame. Almost everything we're afraid of other than death is afraid of the shame. It's that powerful. Our whole lives are torqued around it. Let me give you one example of how powerful this can be.
The greater the number of experiences of reading in which a child experiences shame, the more likely it is that every experience of reading is going to be associated with the expectation of shame.
They said we have to read out of a book or something. I'm afraid they're going to make us read out loud.
I was hoping to be the last person called, but I was the first person called. I didn't really want to read it, but she said you have to, and I was embarrassed to read it, so I had to read it. So I read it, and after that I was really embarrassed.
The ongoing experience of reading almost involves wariness of when is the shame going to occur.
I'd be like, oh my God.
I feel nervous. I'm nervous. Nervous. Makes me feel shy.
Shy? What does shy mean?
When you're scared to do something and there's a whole bunch of people around.
I'd start sweating. I'd be like, I don't know if I'd literally start sweating, but I would. I'd get real nervous, and you could see that I was getting nervous and embarrassed.
Ever since then, I made me comfortable reading in front of people, and they made fun of me and stuff, so I just never really liked to read after that.